Hello, this is Kathleen. I'm extremely humbled and extremely grateful for being pardoned and released from prison.
Prepare for the biggest jailbreak of the year. We will delve into the lives of convicts who will be released in the coming months. From redemption stories to contentious cases, these individuals are poised to walk out of the prison gates and back into the world. Will they repent or revert to their old ways? Let's find out. There are the 10 most feared prisoners who will be released this year. Number 1. Nicola Edgington. The conviction of Nicola Edgington, a woman classified as exceptionally dangerous for taking a stranger's life in the street, might be reversed, allowing her to be released sooner. The Criminal Cases Review Commission has stated that it has referred Edgington's case to the Court of Appeal, stating a real possibility that her crime conviction may be overturned and replaced with a manslaughter conviction. Nicola Edgington, now 43 years old, took the life of Grandma Sally Hodkin and attempted to take the life of Kerry Clark in a grisly rampage in Bexley Heath, southeast London, in 2011. She used a butcher's knife in the attacks, earning her a minimum sentence of 37 years in jail. During her trial, Judge Brian Barker described her as manipulative and exceptionally dangerous, calling her conduct selfish. However, due to fresh information about her mental health, the Criminal Cases Review Commission has taken the unprecedented step of submitting her conviction to the Court of Appeal. This new knowledge implies that her guilt for the acts was much reduced at the time they happened. This event has had a profound impact on the Hodkin family, notably Sally Hodkin's son Len, who characterized it as soul-destroying. In a sad twist, it is found that Nicola Edgington was previously convicted of manslaughter in 2006 for fatally stabbing her mother, Marion, the year before. She was jailed permanently under the Mental Health Act following her conviction, yet she was miraculously freed from a mental hospital just 3 years later. A counsel, Len Hodkin, voiced alarm about the potential ramifications of reducing Edgington's conviction to manslaughter by reduced responsibility. He is concerned that such a move may result in a hospital order, allowing physicians to discharge her early. He stressed Edgington's disturbing record of violence, which includes the demise of her mother and the demise of Sally Hodkin and Kerry Clark. He questioned if society should continue to give somebody like Edgington many opportunities to endanger the public, considering her history of violence and the deaths she has already taken. The Criminal Cases Review Commission hand-delivered letter to Len Hodkin also indicated that Nicola Edgington had changed her name to Nicole Thomas. Number 2. John Venables. One of Jamie Bulger's attackers, John Venables, has allegedly been given a second parole hearing, boosting the prospect of his departure from jail in the coming weeks. Venables, now 40 years old, and Robert Thompson, who is 39 years old, perpetrated the heinous crime when they were just 10 years old. They abducted, tortured, and took the life of Jamie Bulger before dumping his disfigured body beside a Liverpool railway line 30 years ago. Jamie was abducted at a shopping mall in Bootle, Merseyside on February 12, 1993. Venables and Thompson were both granted life sentences in 2001, although Venables has been returned to jail twice since then, in 2010 and 2017, for possessing obscene photos of people. Despite his fears that a recent legal change would prevent his release, Venables has been notified that his case will be considered in the coming weeks. According to reports, James's mother, Denise Fergus, and father, Ralph, have both given statements in an attempt to keep Venables in custody. Justice Secretary Alex Chalk is understood to share their worries. According to a source, Venables is enthusiastic about his chances of gaining his freedom, which may be his final chance, and has been assiduously preparing his presentation for the parole panel. However, another source stated that the criminal's release is very improbable, characterizing him as a chaotic character who has not demonstrated major indications of rehabilitation. With a new measure scheduled to be submitted early next year, the Justice Secretary is anticipated to get the ability to prohibit repeat criminals from being freed. The victims and prisoners. Bill will make public safety the only priority when deciding whether to release repeat criminals. Currently, convicts' rights play more heavily in such choices. Denise Fergus has been an outspoken opponent of Venables' release, meeting with Justice Secretary Dominic Raab to convey her worries. She said Rab had assured her that his reform bill would keep her child's murderer behind bars. This guarantee gave her some peace of mind, given Rab's proposed law had a 2 strikes and you're out clause. Michael Fergus, James's 29-year-old brother, said that even after 3 decades, he would never forgive the crimes and underscored the necessity of keeping Venables behind bars. Michael was born 8 months after the horrible tragedy, yet he has been profoundly affected by its aftermath. He was adamant that the criminals would never be forgiven for robbing him of the chance to meet his elder brother, as well as for the significant influence their acts had on his youth. Number 3. Colin Pitchfork. Colin Pitchfork, known for the horrible crimes in which he took the lives of 2 young girls, has been granted parole, a decision that has sparked indignation and anxiety among the victims' relatives and the community. Pitchfork was convicted of the terrible attack on 15-year-old girls Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire in 1983 and 1986. His release after decades in prison raises concerns about the judicial system and public safety. Colin Pitchfork, now 63 years old and known as David Thorpe, received a life term for his actions. Notably, he was the first person in history to be convicted using DNA evidence after attempting to avoid arrest by inducing a coworker to take a blood test on his behalf during the murder inquiry. The parole board reached the decision to release Pitchfork after determining that it was no longer essential to keep him in prison for public safety. Their reasoning, documented in a 7-page paper, included protective factors that might lessen the chance of reoffending, notably mentioning Pitchfork's wife and friends' support. The announcement of Pitchfork's forthcoming release, on the other hand, has provoked indignation, particularly among the victims' relatives and community members. Dawn Ashworth's mother, Barbara Ashworth, voiced her shock and anxiety, calling the decision diabolical. Despite the passage of time, she underscored the mystery regarding Pitchfork's goals and the possibility for him to cause disturbance if released. Alberto Costa, the Member of Parliament for South Leicestershire, expressed his displeasure with the decision. Given the nature of his offenses, he believed that Pitchfork remained a very significant threat to the public. Costa said his plan to petition the government to overturn the judgment, emphasizing the significant impact Pitchfork's acts continue to have on the neighborhood. Pitchfork's release is especially problematic because he was released in 2021, only to be returned to prison 2 months later. During this time, he violated the terms of his license by approaching a lone girl, raising worries about his capacity to follow the rules and the possible threat he poses. The decision to release convicted criminal Colin Pitchfork is divided and contentious, highlighting the complexity of the judicial system, rehabilitation, and public safety. It has rekindled concerns about parole reform and authorities' responsibilities to guarantee community safety when considering the release of persons with a history of such violent crimes. Number 4. Jacob Matt Morgan. Legal matters can range from simple to complex, necessitating a detailed study to reach the right conclusion. This complication becomes much more obvious when instances include teens who may not completely comprehend the repercussions of their behavior. In March 2015, a small boy died in a horrific trailer fire in York County, South Carolina. Months later, Jacob Matt Morgan, then 17, found himself in court, accused of being personally responsible for his newborn brother's demise. Prosecutors said Morgan stood by callously, watching as his sister died in the fire, providing no assistance and crying what they regarded to be false cries. Morgan, on the other hand, insisted that he had done all in his ability to save his beloved sibling. The courtroom drama escalated as the case progressed, and the stakes for Morgan became increasingly dire. His anxiety grew as the judicial processes continued. Unfortunately, Morgan's fixation with fire was a well-known source of anxiety among his family. The prosecution offered overwhelming evidence to back the prosecution's contention that Morgan had finally acknowledged causing the fire that killed his brother. The fact that the fire started in 3 different places added validity to the notion that this was a deliberate act, compounding an already complicated case. The huge schism among the jurors was one of the case's distinguishing features. Some jury members questioned if Morgan's regret was real and if he was actually innocent, while others thought he was exaggerating his anguish. The mystery surrounding his genuine reasons made determining his guilt or innocence difficult. Morgan's family's unflinching support, who firmly believed in his innocence, added another degree of complication. Their unwavering confidence in his favor added an emotional dimension to the highly charged trial, hampering an objective evaluation of the facts. His parole was denied, however, he is set to be released this year. Number 5. Robert Chambers. The guy known as the Preppy and related to the Central Park Strangler case, who was involved in a crime that shook New York City in the 1980s, has yet to be freed from jail. Robert Chambers, famed for confessing to taking the life of an 18-year-old Jennifer Levin when he was just 19 years old. Chambers' dark chapter began with taking the life of Jennifer Levin, whose lifeless corpse was discovered in Central Park partially dressed. He initially admitted to the horrible deed, but then claimed that it was an unintended consequence of her wish for harsh sexual experiences. The jury pondered for 9 days without reaching a decision during Chambers' trial. Finally, he accepted a plea bargain, confessing to first-degree manslaughter in exchange for a jail term ranging from 5 to 15 years. He completed his 15-year sentence and was freed in 2003, signifying his return to society. His freedom, however, was short-lived, as he faced drug-related and other accusations in 2 and 7. Chambers, now 56, has not yet been released, according to records on the Department of Corrections website, although there are hints that his release may be close. The specifics of his present whereabouts are unknown. When he is released, it is believed that he will stay on parole. Chambers' re-entry into the criminal court system began soon after his parole in 2003, when he was jailed for drug-related charges 2005. 2 years later, he was arrested again for distribution, this time for selling drugs from his flat. Chambers experienced resistance during the second arrest, which happened when he was 41 years old, when officers sought to shackle him for the felony charges. The lingering effects of Robert Chambers' actions continue to weigh heavily on Jennifer Levin's family, who was robbed of her future as a result of the sad events of that fateful day. Ellen Levin, a family member of Jennifer, comments on the tragic loss, sharing thoughts on what may have been had Jennifer been alive. She ponders Jennifer's prospective life choices, appearance, and the grandkids she will never have, grieving Jennifer's aspiration of becoming a designer being cruelly cut short by the events of that fateful day. Number 6. Jesse Johnson. Following the Court of Appeals' overturning of his conviction 2 years ago, an Oregon man sentenced to death for taking the life of a young lady 2 decades ago may soon be free. Jesse Johnson was falsely convicted of the fatal stabbing of Harriet Sonny Thompson, a 28-year-old nurse's aide, at her Salem home on March 20, 1998, an offense he has consistently denied. When a former governor imposed a moratorium on executions in 2011, his sentence was commuted from death to life in prison. The Oregon Innocence Project, which represented Johnson throughout his appeal, claimed that racial prejudice was a major factor in his unjust imprisonment. The organization claimed that Johnson's trial counsel failed to interrogate a key witness who saw a white man exit Thompson's home. "I was failed by the system," Johnson, who is black, said in an interview. "The police constructed a circumstantial case in a capital crime in which there was no forensic evidence linking me to the crime. Everything was a lie." Johnson's adamant assertions of innocence finally led to a re-evaluation of his case, with the Oregon Court of Appeals overturning his conviction in 2021. The Oregon Court of Appeals judge determined that Johnson's legal counsel failed to adequately explore material that may have changed the result of the case. As a consequence, the Marion County District Attorney's Office filed fresh charges against Johnson, and the court began re-examining previously ignored evidence. The evidence of a neighbor, Patricia Hubbard, who had been prevented from giving her tale by a detective during the first inquiry, was essential in the appeal. Hubbard, who was contacted by police until after Johnson's conviction, claimed that on March 20, 1998, she saw a white male park his van in Thompson's driveway and enter her home. Soon after, Hubbard heard cries coming from Thompson's house, followed by a thump and quiet. She described witnessing a white male depart the residence. T was revealed that cops had made a disturbing racist remark to Hubbard. This prejudiced comment harmed the inquiry, perhaps contributing to Jesse Johnson's erroneous conviction. Furthermore, one of Johnson's current lawyers, Richard Wolff, brought out an important piece of evidence: an inexplicable drop of blood discovered in Thompson's sink that did not match the DNA of either Thompson or Johnson. Surprisingly, the authorities had failed to undertake any additional DNA testing on this blood sample, raising concerns about the previous investigation's completeness. Jesse Johnson, who spent years jailed for a crime he did not commit, is now free to pursue a better future. His story is a sharp reminder of the significance of a fair and impartial criminal justice system, as well as the implications of racial bias in court procedures. Number 7. Kathleen Folbig. Kathleen Folbig, a convicted criminal, will be freed from jail after serving a 2-decade sentence, according to a pardon issued by New South Wales Attorney General Michael Daly. Her release represents a watershed moment in a case marked by controversy and suspicions about her culpability. Kathleen Folbig was taken out of Grafton Jail in northern New South Wales on Monday morning and to the house of her friend Tracy Chapman in Coffs Harbour. Hugs, laughing, and tears accompanied the two friends' bittersweet reunion. Miss Folbig, who is 55 years old now, voiced her joy, apprehension, and bewilderment about her newfound independence, adding, "I am so elated, it's not funny. And I'm nervous and everything else. I'm still wondering, is this even happening? Oh my God." Folbig's conviction for 3 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter goes back to 2003. Patrick, Sarah, Laura, and Caleb, her children, had all passed away in strange circumstances between 1989 and 1999. Folbig maintained her innocence throughout her sentence. The appointment of Tom Bathurst to oversee an inquiry into her conviction was a watershed moment in this case. His assessment cast substantial doubt on her culpability, citing scientific advances that showed a reasonable possibility 3 of the children passed away of natural causes. Bathurst's investigation also called into question the concept that Kathleen Folbig was anything other than a loving mother to her children. While Kathleen Folbig will be freed from jail, however, she has not been legally exonerated of the allegations that led to her imprisonment. This difference allows for future legal concerns and conversations about her case. Kathleen Folbig recounted her intentions for her first night of freedom, which included reveling in a T-bone steak and appreciating the simple pleasure of stirring her tea with a metal spoon, a privilege she had been denied while imprisoned. "I can't thank everybody enough for all of the support and all of the hard work that has gone into reaching this moment," she added, expressing thanks for the help she got. "I'm so overjoyed it's insane. I'm stunned. So thank you." Kathleen Folbig's case has been difficult and convoluted, with heated disputes over her guilt or innocence. Number 8. Leslie Van Houten. Leslie Van Houten, a former member of the infamous Manson family cult, has been granted freedom after being imprisoned in the United States for 53 years. Van Houten's lawyer verified her release, marking a watershed event in the Manson family's dark history and heinous atrocities. Van Houten's conviction arises from the tragic events of August 10, 1969, when she assisted in taking the lives of grocery store owner Leno LaBianca and his wife Rosemary at their Los Angeles home. The crime scene was embellished with insulting phrases. Members of Charles Manson's cult also had stormed the Los Angeles hillside home of actress Sharon Tate, who was married to filmmaker Roman Polanski, the night before these horrible actions. Polanski was in Europe at the time, leaving Tate and others susceptible to the violence of the cult. Leslie Van Houten's parole release had been anticipated following California Governor Gavin Newsom's statement that he would no longer oppose her release. Van Houten, now 73, was serving a life sentence, but the governor opted against filing any more legal challenges since they were unlikely to succeed. Notably, Leslie Van Houten is the first member of the Manson family to receive parole. According to her lawyer, Nancy Tetriot, Van Houten left the prison institution in the Southern California town of Corona and moved to an unidentified halfway house for a year. Tetriot noted that Van Houten had been a model prisoner since her arrival, participating in treatment for 4 decades and achieving a significant metamorphosis. Charles Manson, a cult leader, passed away in jail at 2017 at the age of 83, cementing his legacy as one of the 20th century's most notorious criminals. He masterminded a string of heinous crimes, ordering his mostly young and female followers to take 7 lives, including of actress Sharon Tate, all in the name of what authorities alleged was a plot to provoke a race war. Number 9. Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Gypsy Rose Blanchard received a 10-year jail term in 2016 for her participation in taking the life of her own mother, Dee Dee Blanchard. Gypsy's turbulent existence was characterized by terrible cruelty at the hands of her mother, who led her to a life of captivity and deception. Gypsy's treatment by Dee Dee was atrocious. She not only kept her kid at home, but she also tricked her into claiming to have numerous impairments. Dee Dee devised a complex scheme to falsely collect disability payments on Gypsy's behalf. To add to the deceit, Dee Dee lied about Gypsy's age, convincing her that she was only 14 years old when, in fact, she was 19 at the time. Gypsy managed to contact someone online called Nick while in the thick of this terrifying circumstance. Gypsy confided in Nick, desperate to escape her mother's anguish, and shared the bleak circumstances of her existence. They devised a strategy to liberate themselves from Dee Dee's suffocating hold. When Nick arrived at the Blanchard home one fateful night, they put their plan into action. Gypsy and Nick took matters into their own hands out of despair and a desire for independence, culminating in Dee Dee's terrible demise. They attempted to flee as a result of their activities but were captured by law enforcement authorities. Gypsy suffered the legal repercussions of her acts and received a prison sentence. In her greed, Dee Dee subjected Rose to unnecessary surgery and medication and controlled her through physical and psychological abuse. According to Mark Feldman, an international expert on factitious disorders, this was the first case he had experienced in which an abused child killed an abusive parent. Gypsy Rose pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and received a decade-long punishment from the court. Meanwhile, Nick received a life sentence for his involvement in the crime. Following Gypsy's conviction, a large number of people came out in her support, claiming that she did not deserve to be imprisoned. They said her acts were a desperate reaction to a lifetime of unspeakable abuse and manipulation at the hands of her mother. A ray of hope is on the horizon for Gypsy Rose Blanchard in the current year. She is about to be released after a decade in prison. Many people feel that this is Gypsy's long-awaited chance to recover some form of normalcy in her life. Number 10. Luis Garavito. From 1992 through 1999, Luis Garavito, dubbed La Bestia, tormented Colombia, Ecuador, and Venezuela, leaving a trail of approximately 200 child and teenage victims in his wake. Garavito's nightmare began in a terrible childhood characterized by constant harm from his father and violence from his mother. These scars will determine his path to heinous deeds. Garavito escalated to live in 1992, utilizing devious ways to trap his victims. He was an expert at disguising himself as a priest, farmer, traveler, seller, gambler, or old gentleman. He preyed on vulnerable young people, frequently destitute or homeless. He enticed them with promises of rapid money, gifts, candy, and cash, or he invited them to drinks or cake. He then took them on long walks, put them to work, or assigned them strange duties. Garavito's reign of terror went unreported until a terrifying discovery in Nacederos, a small Colombian village. 14 young boys, ages 8 to 14, were discovered buried in a grave, their identities obscured by the passage of time. More boys were disappearing without a trace, and on April 1999, a mother's plea for her missing son, John Ivan Sabergall, caused the authorities to pay attention. Prosecutor Fernando Aya and investigator Aldemar Duran investigated the case, uncovering comparable connections across the country, such as identical burial procedures, crime scene evidence, and victim demographics. They began to piece together the horrific image of the criminal, a guy with a noticeable limp, aged 40 to 60, and motivated by evil impulses. The authorities concentrated on individuals over the age of 42 within a certain height range and linked to regions where victims were discovered. Investigator Duran also discovered a link between Luis Garavito and another possible suspect, Pedro Pablo Ramirez Garcia. Mario Leon Artunduaga rebuilt the features of 4 victims as the inquiry progressed, humanizing the tragedy. Luis's sister, Esther Garavito Cubilos, donated a suitcase containing his personal belongings, adding to the suspicion. Garavito was further implicated by evidence that he had been injured during the crimes. Luis Garavito confessed to taking the lives of 140 people after hours of interrogation and extensive accounts of his atrocities. He was convicted on 138 charges, resulting in one of Colombia's heaviest prison terms in history. Garavito is still in a maximum security jail in Valledupar, Colombia. He lives separate from the other convicts in order to become an advocate for mistreated children. Although he was sentenced to 1,800 years in prison, Colombian law limited his sentence to 40 years, which was reduced to 22 years for his assistance in the investigation. Garavito can apply for parole in 2023.